My story, as far as how I grew up, is really not typical for most people. And so my earliest memories from the ages of 4 to 8 were of extreme child abuse at the hands of my mom's mom and her then husband. And my mom almost got us taken away by CPS when I was 8, which is what ended it. And my dad was a truck driver. He was gone all the time. And so my mom was very young, wanted to be out and do her thing. And so that's kind of what the situation was. And they finally got a divorce. And so at the age of 10, pretty much immediately when my dad got custody of us, he dropped us off at his mom's house with my other grandma. And at this time, obviously we had had a lot of trauma and we were bad kids basically. And so my grandma had enough to deal with, and she said, "You can sleep here, but I don't want you here." So we became street kids. It was my brother and I. And so I went down a very dark path for several years of my life until I was about 17. What kind of started to pull me out of that, I always attribute it to three things. So my girlfriend at the time, who is now my ex-wife, and the birth of our first daughter. I became a young father at the age of 19, and the grace of God, because I wasn't really trying to change my life at that time. But one thing I did know is that I didn't want my kid's life to be anything close to how mine was. And the reality was just staring me in the face that I was about to be a father, and I was about to go down that same path. And so went to college in Waco, to Texas State Technical College. And the reason why I did that is I've always been an artist, and so I knew I wanted to do art as my profession, and I wanted to have my own business. So I went to technical school to learn the software, the tools of the trade, and started to build my business. Came back to Lubbock in 2003. I went to college in 2000, came back in 2003. My second daughter was born in 2004. And during that time, I was just working jobs as I was building the business. And in 2008, the business was fully self-sustainable. So I've been self-employed in that way since that time. Well, in 2018, unfortunately, my oldest daughter took her own life. And so that threw me into a deep depression for 2 years. And when I was coming out of that depression in 2020, the George Floyd incident had just happened. And so there was a lot of energy online, and there was a Facebook group that was created here in Lubbock that was just kind of having these conversations around the racial reckoning and things that were going on in the wake of the George Floyd situation. And so in the midst of all of this, there was a document shared in there called the Lubbock Disparity Report. And so I'm a native of East Lubbock, and East Lubbock, historical East and North Lubbock have been traditionally neglected by public policy and resources. And so that wasn't really a surprise to us. And another thing that wasn't a surprise to us was that the city was heading in a southwest direction. And every time it kind of moved a little further, everything behind it decayed a little more. When I read it, I was very incensed by it. And I just knew I wanted to do something to help the community that I come from. I spent most of my life in East Lubbock, except for the past few years. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. I was 39 years old in the summer of 2020. I had never even registered to vote. I was so checked out of political processes, I had to Google our mayor to see who he was. So did that and found out, just so happened the next day, he was having a coffee with the mayor. I literally was reading the report on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, he was having the coffee with the mayor at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I had some questions and went down there, and I wasn't the only one with questions. This document had been now widely shared around Lubbock due to it being exposed to this group. And so a lot of people were there with questions. There was an interaction between myself and the mayor that kind of went left because he wasn't able to respond in a way that made much sense to people that were in the room. And so when I realized that he just wasn't going to budge on his positions, I knew in that moment that my life was about to change. And so I told him I was going to use my vote and my voice to get him out of office. Now, mind you, when I told him that, I was not even registered to vote. And he very smugly said, well, the election's in November. And so it wasn't a good look for him. It got a lot of people energized, and then it thrust me into the spotlight. I didn't know that there was a Facebook Live video being recorded of that, and by the next morning it had been viewed 3,000 times, so it went Lubbock viral. And so that pretty quickly thrust me into the spotlight. A few days later, myself and a group of other folks created an organization called Lubbock Compact to start to engage with City Council and public policy processes to try to correct some of these things that have happened in our city and put us on a better path. I'm the communications chair for Lubbock Compact, which means I'm basically the media face of the organization, and I'm also the one that does most of the community engagement and outreach. And so the void we wanted to fill was, we wanted to, first of all, ourselves keep up with what was going on at City Hall and try to be as involved as possible so that we could catch things if they start to go some way that could be detrimental to communities. Because what we were seeing was that most of the folks on the current council just didn't have the perspective of people who don't live in their districts. And so it was hard for them to understand why we were advocating for the things we were advocating for and why it mattered so much. And so we began engaging them pretty heavily. This also involved organizing people from the community, which again, a lot of that fell on me. And so throughout my life, I have done a lot of different things. And so I've been a hip hop musician and producer in this area with some regional fame between the years of 2005, 2009. I was also on FM radio here for 2 years. I've been a public figure basically now for the majority of my life. And so that was the part I meant when I told him I was going to use my voice, because I do have a following on social media. And so I utilized all of that to organize people, to let people know what was going on, and we started to affect some positive change in the community. And so as I was going through that process, people asked me, had I ever considered running for an office? And I said, no, I wasn't even registered to vote before I started to do all this. The only reason why I got into this was because I just wanted to help my community. It's just something I'm very passionate about. And I felt that that's where they saw a place where I could serve the best. And so that was kind of the key thing in me deciding to run. We've been able to get it to a place now to where myself and one other person is considered as the front runner. And I'm likely to be headed into a runoff. And so all of this is pretty historical, including our advocacy work. The city really hasn't seen much of anything like this. And so I'm just really proud and honored to be a part of it all. And hopefully we can get me in there and make further change. I'm Adam Hernandez, and I approve this message.